slide here. So today's Let's Talk Business is all about fundraising for a nonprofit. There was a part one that was starting a nonprofit that we had just a couple weeks ago, and I posted a link later in my slides here that if you need to watch the recording, please do so. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. This webinar is being recorded, so I'll send it out to you if you're listening to it, or people will be able to listen to it late. In between asking questions, please mute yourself since we are being recorded. That way we don't have a lot of background noise. And then please feel free to ask questions, especially Lisa, since we have such a small group. Even if we get a couple more people on, we want to make sure that your questions are answered. So raise your hand if you want to ask audibly, or you can also type into the chat box. All right, a little bit about the Washington Center for Women in Business. We are funded by the U.S. Small Business Administration to provide business assistance to women-owned firms, either in the startup process or if they're an established business. And we do this through one-on-one business coaching, as well as workshops like this online one right now, as well as in-person ones that we have throughout the state, mostly in the South Puget Sound region. It is $25 to meet with us after the first session, but we do have scholarships available. My name is Tracy Hansen. My contact information is on the screen there, as well as the direct contact information for our business coaches. And we're always happy to answer questions, big or small. And I don't want to take up a lot of time. If you want to see our other events, we have an entire calendar that we put a lot of different business events, not only ours, but our partners. And that wcwb.org/LTB is where the Starting a Nonprofit Part 1 recording lives, if you need to watch it. Well, with that, let's hand it over to Jim. And were you on the webinar 2 weeks ago, Lisa? And I think you'll just need to put the arrow keys there, yep. All right.
Well, good afternoon, Lisa, welcome. We're going to today really address what are the fun parts of being part of a nonprofit. The last session was about how to become legal. And there are several steps there that are important, but once you're in place and you're legal, you're in the business of both running your business as well as you're able to invite the public to participate with you, and by and large, either as a volunteer or as a financial supporter through gifts, grants, or contributions. So as you want to get started thinking about fundraising, and here are the things we're going to discuss this afternoon. We're going to begin with understanding the proper needs for and the uses of what we call the case for giving. That's the text or the speech or the elevator speech or the grant proposal context. That's what explains what your organization is doing, needs to do, why it needs to do it, who it's going to serve, and what you need in order to accomplish it. It's actually a rather complete document. Call it the whole set of arguments as to why people should flock to your organization and be excited about supporting you in carrying out your mission. We're going to look at some of the fundraising basic fundamentals. What are the methods and techniques that fundraising professionals have developed and have a lot of experience with and know how to make them work? We want to understand what is the strategy that's involved in fundraising, particularly beginning with what we call the annual fund, because every nonprofit organization engages in fundraising every year, all year, every day. And we need to understand how we integrate various fundraising strategies during a 12-month period, whether that's the calendar year or the fiscal year for your organization. What are those strategies? How do they work together? What is the budget that's required? And how do we track the results through giving reports? Fundraising is a very visible enterprise, and board members and the management team are very interested in how we're doing, how well we're doing, and they really want to understand the performance, and they also need to understand how to evaluate performance. So we have various samples for understanding how the analysis of your results can demonstrate you're both effective and efficient. Every nonprofit organization is accountable to the public. That is part of what the law allows. And we are responsible for developing answers and demonstrating results, measurable outcomes, if you will, that deliver benefits back to the community in exchange for our tax-exempt privileges. Accountability is increasingly important today as ever. And among other things, we must preserve the relationship we have with the public based on their trust and confidence, not only that we're doing the right thing, but we're doing the right things with their money. We'll wrap this up with some issues associated with operating policies and procedures. For example, what you will accept as a gift, what you won't accept as a gift. And then there's the Fundraising Code of Ethics as a guide. So as we want to get started then, understanding what is the case for support. And every fundraising program needs to be able to document exactly why it's asking for money. And it starts with what is the board-approved strategic plan? What is the organization's purpose? What is its vision for the future? How does it address the needs of the community today, tomorrow, and is in a position to explain to the public how they can help make that vision happen? Based on the strategic plan, the organization creates its fiscal plan. In other words, what is the amount of money and what categories and what sources are going to be needed in order to complete the plan, in order to fulfill what both the budget will define for this year, but also how it fits into the overall strategic plan, all of which is designed to deliver benefits back to the community. Now, once those are in place, we're in the position then to tell our story. We use marketing and communication strategies as well as fundraising methods and techniques to inform, to engage the public, to join with us and help to make our strategic plan, goals and objectives, our mission and vision happen. That's quite a translation, but it does require all three of these objectives to be actively engaged. Now, we understand what marketing is, what is our brand, what is our image, what do people know about us and the accuracy of that. But we're using the messaging through marketing to create our clients, to let people in the community know what are the services we provide and how they may access them. Therefore, we're trying to use our messaging to invite them to participate, or if they have a need that corresponds to our programs and what we offer, to act on that and to join us and take advantage of what we offer. Once we've established a kind of a visibility, we have to continue to inform and educate our public. Telling the story is important. We want to tell the story in terms of the people we serve. We have to repeat the story throughout the year. We have to report what we do. What are the results? What benefits have we actually, in other words, what have we done? You know, we took care of your dog. He had a specific medical problem, and with the help of the volunteer and with the care that we provided, you have your doggy back. But we need to utilize our communications to build confidence and trust that our organization is valid as well as legal, that you can give us funds or you can volunteer and spend your time with us, and it's a positive, beneficial experience. And we want the community widely to know and understand who we are and what we do, even if they are personally not going to be involved. With those in place, we're now able to actually raise the question of asking for support. I like to say that this is a business about friend raising first and relationship building. No one starts out with a complete knowledge of who we are and what we're trying to do, and so it takes a while. We have to develop also a willingness not just to support us with their funds, but also to help us with their time and their talent. Or if you will, volunteers work for free, and we appreciate that principle in the American tradition, but we also believe volunteers have a lot to contribute to allow us to help us to succeed. We also do solicit contributions, and these gifts are for what we have defined as the priority needs in the community that our mission addresses. And all those individuals whom we are engaged with, whether they be volunteers or contributors, are indeed our best friends. And we want to maintain continuous contact, letting people know whether they give or not, whether they volunteer or not. This is what we're doing, how we're doing, and the success we're having. Maintain that public confidence. Now, what are some of the contents in a case for giving? The kinds of things that we want people to know and understand about us. For example, on the left-hand column, what does our mission, vision, and value statements actually state as to our purpose? What are the programs specifically? What are the services that we offer? But now we want to tell that story in terms of where we're trying to go with those programs and services. Perhaps we want to increase our capacity to serve from 300 patients, customers, students, whatever, to 500 over the next 3 years. And what are the steps to take to get there? We want to be able to explain who our governing board is, because those are the leaders to our organization. And these are people that are probably known in the community, and that helps build the public's confidence that we are well led and well managed, and they can trust us. Trust us with their money, as well as they may need our programs and services. What about our staff and our competencies? What are the qualifications, if you will, or the accreditations or the licensure that may be required that allow you to have confidence that we are indeed competent and know what we're doing? What facilities and equipment we have that is suitable? Oh, it's also current. I worked in hospitals for several years, and the last thing someone wants to hear about is, well, you need an x-ray, but our 15-year-old x-ray machine is broken at the moment, and the parts won't be here for 2 days. Sorry. We need to have equipment that works, that is also current. What are our finances to the extent that we're able, that the public is also able to review them, to understand we know what we're doing and we know how to manage our resources, including their funds. We also are committed, and we want in our case statement, our case for giving, to be able to explain what is our plan and what is our objective and how we are going to measure ourselves. And then lastly, our history. Let's say we're not new. We've been around for 5 years, and here is what we've accomplished. So as you see on the right-hand side, a whole corresponding group of communications points or message elements that address these issues. That's quite a lot of information all to be packed together, but it is reasonably complete, and what it wants to do is to be able to answer all the public's questions before we actually go out and start to talk to them. We have addressed as much of this as possible. Now, there's several items on the list. For example, number 3, does it have a broad appeal and seek unity in a common cause? Or number 5 down the list, does it appeal to the heart, to the intellect, and to the donor's own personal aspirations? The reason that they're interested in it is because they have had a decided interest in our cause. They've engaged in it before with others, and it would look to us to add to their sense that this is an area that does need attention, and they are willing to be a part of it again. Then 2 lines down, does it contain a compelling purpose? This is something we need to do now. This is something that requires attention now, requires their support. The last 2 are a couple that are sort of obvious. Is it easy to read and understand? we are trying to address a wide public, and they need to be able to comprehend what we're talking about, and not to be overly lightheaded, but is it grammatically correct? In other words, do we sound like we actually are competent in our ability to communicate? And oh, don't forget, put it on all of the available social media sites so it's easily accessible to the public. And of course, you can think of this as a sales document as well, and that's reasonable. Now, fundraising is made up of a lot of different areas of activity. And if you look at the two sides to this pyramid, on the left, we initially begin with donor contact. Then we grow the donors into our organization in terms of more involvement, leading to their commitment to their support. Donors don't make just one gift. They can make several gifts each year, and we would hope that they will stay with us for many years. On the right-hand side is a sort of step-by-step process. We first have to identify a group of people that we communicate with in the community itself. And we only have limited resources, so we have to be selective in how we address the community. We want to inform them and stimulate their interest in what we're doing and invite them to be involved. And over time to continue to be involved with us to the extent that they continue to invest. As you can see, inside the pyramid, there are 3 levels. And building pyramids starts at the bottom, of course. But we look to direct mail, to acquire and renew. We look to membership organizations. We look to groups and guilds and support organizations that we create and maintain, and others do. And we all love benefits and special events. But there's a lot of different activities there. How do you organize that through the 12 months of the calendar year with the greatest efficiency and effectiveness? Occasionally, our organizations have major needs, and that requires major giving opportunities. Corporations and foundations who also can make gifts annually, but major gifts perhaps only when there is a really unique and special need. And so we have ways in which we can deal with major gifts. But by the way, major gifts from individuals are going to come, by and large, from those folks in the annual giving pool who have been your supporters all along. And at the end, there is the opportunity to leave some of your estate or use planned giving vehicles and estate planning vehicles to support your favorite organization. Now, organizing all of that is going to take years to build. So I like to suggest we think of fundraising strategies as a multi-year investment plan. And it begins and it operates every year through the annual fund, or sometimes called the annual campaign. Sometimes we use campaign terminology, which sounds militaristic, but some of the times as you listen to and make plans for major fundraising efforts, it sounds an awful like landing the 6th Army on Normandy Beach because of all the preparations that are required. So in any annual giving program, you have to think about some of the kinds of things you're trying to accomplish. First of all, this is more than likely, I call the front lines of fundraising. It's your greatest outreach on the part of your organization into the community to invite them to hear about you, to bring what you do to their attention, and to engage them. You probably do not have any other program that reaches outside the community as extensively as your fundraising program, because everyone inside the organization is paying attention to delivering on the programs and services, not being focused on the outside. The goal, again, is friend raising. You want to engage people in support of your organization who also believe in your organization. You want to find ways that you can, if you will, identify and qualify likely suspects and prospects who should, if they heard about your organization, may be inclined to be supportive. So if you're a pet organization and you're supporting various animals, then other organizations in the community that are also engaged in animal support or in any way, shape, or form related to that, those are folks who have an interest in what your cause is about and may, if they hear about you, be willing to consider joining you. So how do you find those people? Another objective in any annual program is to find new donors and acquire them, invite them in, but more importantly, to renew and continue to seek the support of those who already support you and introduce to them perhaps what may be an opportunity to invite them to consider if they could give a little bit more in support of what your program objectives are this year. Annual giving the annual fund campaign is a very great opportunity to engage volunteers. It's an opportunity to train them on how to solicit, but it's also an opportunity to train them in all the other aspects of where your organization can be helpful. For example, if you go to a hospital, there are volunteers there who will assist you in several ways. They don't administer health care, but they can escort you from one place to the next. They can assist you in finding a specific office, whatever. And the annual program is also a leadership development opportunity to invite people to volunteer to help you with your actual program and also to grow as a volunteer to a point where you might provide leadership to that effort, or you might engage in other programs. In fact, you may over time become a qualified candidate for the board of directors by reason of your leadership ability. So there's a lot of benefits to annual giving. It's a big promotion program. It invites people to be engaged with you. Otherwise, they wouldn't know unless you ask them. It allows the public to have a sense of respect and confidence and trust in you by reason of their personal engagement. It helps them to see that they're a part of your actual achieving worthwhile goals that benefits others in the community. And a lot of donors have aspirations that that's really what they would like to have as a sense of accomplishment for their time and effort in support of your organization. Well, here's a list of a lot of what we call methods and techniques. These are fundraising activities. Direct mail is still very popular today to acquire donors and to renew donors. Just look in your mailbox, especially in the last 60 days of the year. By the way, take a look at those mail envelopes and see, among other things, compare them one to another and understand a little bit about what goes into a mail package and realize that these organizations are using it because it works. And so you can consider that as a possibility for your own program. You can reach thousands of people through the mail. Membership associations. Lots of organizations actually have a membership vehicle. The Performing Arts Group obviously have subscriptions, and they give you a sense of membership that goes with that. Donor clubs are a vehicle which says if you give $100, for example, we're going to make you a member of the donor club, the Century Club. And isn't that wonderful? What a special person you are at $100. And here are the benefits you're going to receive. We're going to send you invitations to our benefit events, of course, so that you, as a special donor, are invited to join us for our whatever it is. We also are now increasingly able and getting expert at the use of social media as part of fundraising as an annual continuous. For example, we're open for business for giving through the internet 24/7, 365 days of the year. These other programs are staged events that have to be scheduled during the year and be held, whereas the internet is wide open. Telephone and telemarketing isn't as popular today because people are very resistant to telephone interruption into their lives, and it is intrusive in their view, and so it's not as successful a vehicle. Groups, guilds, and support groups. Well, if you ever went to a college, you probably heard about the Alumni Association, and between the two of them, they never let you alone. Arts organizations have guilds. Various organizations have support groups of various types that are engaged in active, semi-autonomous roles in support of their favorite organization. Another category are memorials and testimonials. There are occasions when family members, on the passing of one of the senior family members, may want to establish a fund in their memory at their favorite charity. Things like that also are possible. And then lastly, the most successful method of fundraising is called personal solicitation, and usually by teams of 2 or perhaps 3, where you currently meet with a prospective donor or an existing donor to invite them to consider a very special opportunity that, among other things, is going to cost them, but it also is a way in which you bring it to them in the most personal way possible. All the categories of sources of funds for you, look at the first 3: current donors, prior donors, lapsed donors. Donors are your best friends. Pay attention to them. Keep them if you can. If they are not this year but were prior year donors, they're still a better candidate than someone who has never given. And lapsed means they can be recaptured. Qualified prospects are individuals that we actively are going to seek out. There are corporations that make gifts, grants. Mostly these are folks looking for some visibility for the corporation or as a community citizenship kind of project. Foundations, and there's several types of foundations, actually have to give money away. Believe it or not, that's the only one on the list that has to give away 5% of their net asset value every year. But to qualify for a foundation grant is a very tedious exercise in great detail. And oh, by the way, there's 1,000 other people who are applying at the same time. And so they have very carefully defined process and procedures, policies and guidelines as to who they can support and exactly how they make decisions. Being a foundation board member is not an easy assignment. There's associations, civic groups, and societies, whether it's the Lions Club or the Seroptimists or the whatever in the community. Those also are entities that are in community support roles, and that your organization may qualify for them as well.
And Lisa asked, I've heard direct mail works best with older donors, but to get younger donors, social media works best. How do you feel about this thought?
I think that's a pretty good, accurate description. We certainly are aware that the younger donors these days communicate extensively using social media. And whether they would be responsive to mail at all, whether they'd be responsive to any of these other activities actually is still up in the air, since the internet has been applied in fundraising only recently, say 10 years. The internet as a source represents about 7% of all the money given away in America currently. It's growing slowly, but by the way, it doesn't eliminate the others. What it really does is allow us to combine them in our messaging and communications. Older donors, and here now you're talking to me, by the way, we have time to read, and we've always been a recipient and are still accustomed to reading our mail, reading our magazines, etc., not so much just communicating with others on the internet.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I heard actually from a local print shop that their direct mail business is growing, and when we would think that in 2019 it would be shrinking. So I think that we'd have to look up statistics, but I think it's probably viable for more than just the potential older donors. And I did just want to add on the social media front, 2 really big trends I've seen recently with charity giving. One is they've tied one into Black Friday, so now there's Giving Tuesday. So on that weekend, there's all these charities doing it. Hey, Rachel, would you mind muting yourself? And then also these birthday fair, have you seen, I had friends on those on Facebook, which I've noticed are a little bit a younger group, a 25 to 40 or so. And for their birthday, they say, hey, don't give me a gift, donate to my favorite charity. So if you could get people to say that for their birthday and your charity, I've seen sometimes just small 20 bucks, but sometimes hundreds and thousands. So
all of which can work. The trick is, can you capture their interest to continue with you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you've got a birthday next year, so do it again.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thanks, Christy. Now,
Oh, oops, that's me. Where's my mouse? Okay.
all right. Now, just briefly, with a base of annual contributors in many, many categories, when you have a reasonably established program and you've got thousands of donors, and aren't you loving that? You're in a position then to consider for your organization as it moves forward and grows. It may have major gift needs. It may need an expansion of its facilities. It is ready to begin to include estate planning. Here the focus changes a bit to your board members are key to that operation, no matter what that's about. Your best volunteers are going to be needed in order to assist you in personal solicitation. Your best donors, whether you call them major donors or not, the biggest donors you've got are very much a part of your plans. High net worth individuals in the community, this is their time. This is when you can approach them, because your needs now have expanded to this level. And corporations and foundations are also major gift capital campaign prospects. The methods are pretty much personal solicitation by 2 or 3 people. You have to basically spend the time to visit with people, and this depends on the project and the community and your organization, but it takes time to develop these kinds of gifts. But it's all derived from your annual giving activities. Just to sum up what I call Aristotle's the 7 rights, the right person is asking the right prospect for the right gift to the right program or service in the right amount at the right time in the right way. Oh, that's all, right? Just pull that off together. But when you're dealing in a personal solicitation situation, you want to think about, have we got it all together? This is the right time. This is the right team of people. And this is the right amount. And by the way, high net worth individuals know how this works better than you do, probably, because they're the target of a lot of this kind of thing. So you really do want to get your program plan together. Well, here's a sample of what might be an organizational structure for a fundraising department. You have a committee of the board that actually provides leadership and is actively involved. You have a office manager, director of development, whatever the title is, who is responsible for orchestrating all the employee activities, all of the coordinated volunteer programs. And we divide it here into 3 active volunteer-led subcommittees. The annual fund, which works on all of that plan for the year. The events committee that puts on 1 or 2 or 3 of those, which are very time consuming, but are very positive public relations and public engagement opportunities. And then if there is a major gift component or an estate planning component, that you're not overlooking that opportunity as well. This can be a 3-person office as far as staff goes, or more as you grow over time. But the key is that volunteer-led, volunteer-directed, staff-supported is kind of the model that you want to seek. Now, I want to share with you a couple samples of what I call a gift report system. And we're going to look at sources, we're going to look at purposes for the funds that are raised, and we're going to look at the solicitation methods that were used. So an organization begins by putting on the left-hand column, what are all of its sources of funds? The board of directors, of course. The employees are invited to be annual donors. The people we're seeking to acquire are all of our new donor acquisition efforts, our prior donor renewal efforts, whatever corporation and foundation work we can do and we're able to do presently, what local communities, associations, societies can be engaged. Did we receive any bequests during the year? Sometimes these happen because people are greatly engaged with you over a period of time and remember you in their will. Unsolicited gifts, just because people hear about you, you didn't necessarily solicit them directly, but they heard about you, they believe in what you're doing, and they send you money anyway. These are nice people, aren't they? And then other gifts. There's categories here. For example, a corporation gives you some of their product that you can use, and that's a gift in kind, and it isn't necessarily something that you were seeking. You were looking for cash to actually buy these supplies, and here they back up a truck to your office, and here's a box full of exactly what you need, and that has value as well. So as you can see across the top, how many gifts did you receive in each of these sources? How much did they give? And because you have those two figures, you get a bonus, average gift size, which helps you to understand a little bit about which of these programs is actually working pretty well. And if you track these year to year to year, you can monitor whether you're gaining or losing in terms of numbers of donors or average gifts. So that's one form. That's on sources. The next is about purposes or uses. Now, the categories that are accounting categories are unrestricted, which means the donor had no specification as to what you did with their funds. They trust you. Temporarily restricted is the donor because you explained to them these are the categories in our plan for the year that we are seeking funds. They said, okay, I think those capital needs that you identified are where I'd like you to use my money, and they direct their funds to that project, or they direct it to support your clients in terms of their financial needs in order to use your services, and they can't afford it 100%, then it's a wonderful way to be helpful to them directly to give to the financial needs of the clients. Those are temporarily restricted because during the course of the year, those funds actually will be spent as part of the budget that you actually developed. And then permanently restricted are endowments, and those are in two categories. It's unrestricted as to its use, thank you, or it's restricted endowment, which says, oh, I'm going to set up a fund that I want you to keep that's always going to be available to support your clients if they have financial needs. So again, we're counting the numbers of gifts received in each of the categories, the dollar values, and the average gift size. That helps us understand how these programs are working. Again, we're not so much looking at efficiency, we're looking at how effective we are in terms of donors participating in our programs as we outline them to them. And then thirdly, what are the actual fundraising methods that we use to develop these gifts? So we see in the annual giving program that the direct mail acquisition acquired 456 people, just over 10,000, for an average gift of 22. Whereas the direct mail renewal program had 408 people, 25,000, and their average gift was 63. See how important those renewing donors are to the level of support you can begin with new donors. Your membership has 319 members, producing $31,900 because the average gift is $100. Okay, that's pretty direct. That's a nice $31,000 just because that's a level of giving. If you have higher levels, you increase your revenue. Our benefit events had 380 people attended. We raised $40,000, an average gift of $100. What was the price of the tickets? It was $50 a couple, or $50 a piece, excuse me. But we averaged out at just over $100. So, okay, that's working pretty well. Donor clubs, 125 people, $250 average gifts. We like all of these people very much. Thank you. Major giving programs is just another way of tracking how our corporations and foundations, and we don't have a capital campaign, but we did get 2 bequests. Now, if you look at the figures, 1,799 contributors over those 3 reports for $561,000, an average gift of $312. And your board is going to look at this and say, well, that's very nice. Obviously, 1,800 donors a year, 560. Your goal next year is 600. Now, why did they come up with that figure? Well, they looked at how positive all these figures are and how good it looks. $561. Look one line up. Bequests 2 for 100,000. Do you think they're going to come back and give it again? Not likely. So what did you actually raise that you can build on for next year? 461. And to go to 600 from 461 in an annual giving program, probably not going to happen. But if they don't understand by looking at the figures exactly how you arrive at that, they could make the mistaken impression that you could do 600,000. And that would probably not happen, and that causes stress for fundraisers. Another aspect about fundraising, which is very prevalent and needs to be understood, is that it expects that it will grow. There's the assumption that you can raise more money year after year after year. So here is an illustration of growth in giving that actually is trackable. 2 years ago, there were 1,833 donors. Last year, there were 2,200. That's an annual rate of increase of 24%. That's pretty healthy. This year, you're up to 2,500. That's another 11% over the prior year. And you combine those two over 3 years, you are increasing your donor pool at 37%. Now, if the following 3 years that were to fall down below 37%, you would want to be looking at what's happening. So keeping track of gains and losses in terms of numbers of donors is very important. How about revenue? That's important. 561 to 667, 15%, 818,000, 23% increase over that year, 41% increase in revenue over 3 years. Well, that is healthy. If it starts to slip, you will want to know about it right away and understand what's happening. Average gift size went down a little 2 years ago to last year, but it came back up this current year. But 3% growth in average gift size what was happening last year that it dropped? To understand what the figures say is important. So what are the kinds of things you want to track? What you want the board to really believe, and the CFO, by the way, to understand what the role of fundraising is and how well is it performing. We want to understand our effectiveness in what we do and our efficiency in delivering revenue. So how much did we raise? How much was the net after the cost? And what was the return on investment? This is a business, and so ROI is indeed appropriate. So here's an illustration using 3 years of data. 2 years ago, what was the staff costs, salaries? What was the non-labor costs, operations for fundraising? Went from 116 to 124 to current year 135, and we're proposing an increase of 5,000 for next year. What was the revenue projection? Well, we went from 448 to 507 to 563, and we think we can go to 615. This is our proposed budget. We subtract 140,000 salary and labor, non-labor, and we're projecting a revenue of 474, which is about 50,000 above last year. That is reducing our fundraising cost effectiveness by a penny, but increasing our ROI by 20, almost 18, 17%. So how does that look to you as a budget plan based on the actual figures from prior years? Is it believable? Is it credible? Would the board approve its budget at this time based on just the figures? We can help by understanding that gross revenue increased by 51, net income increased by 45, fundraising costs, which is some people's way of saying that's too much or that's not enough or what is the right amount. Well, this is our amount. If we can maintain that, that's pretty good. That's almost 80 cents of every dollar goes to the charitable purpose. Our ROI is looking very good. How many businesses of the board members around the table are actually operating with that kind of annual return on expense or profitability? And a question that's fair to say, should this program continue? This is what it costs, this is what we expect. Or should there be more budget invested since it looks to be pretty profitable? And in that regard, there is a point of view that the focus on minimizing costs can actually prevent organizations from maximizing the engagement of their donors. If their focus of an organization is on efficiency rather than on effectiveness, so if you're not investing in your own productivity because they don't understand it takes dramatically more time and budget to recruit a new donor than to retain the current donor. So where is the focus? Do we understand our relationships with donors to be positive, to retain as many as possible, because it is very expensive and time consuming to go out and find new ones? All right. So if you like, Lisa and Rachel, what kind of programs are you engaged with now and how are they measured? What kind of staff performance as well is involved? How about the board? What is its involvement? And to what extent, where are they focused in terms of looking at fundraising results?
And Lisa, at the beginning, you'd said that you'd had a background in fundraising. Was it nonprofit fundraising or just curious?
All right, let's move on.
Oh, hold on. She said, yes, for homelessness and for a hospital foundation. Okay. Are you doing any fundraising now for your current nonprofit idea, or are you still in the beginning stages? Just beginning. So nothing quite yet. Well, I'm glad that you're here.
I'm pleased to see your background in a hospital foundation. That's probably a fairly sophisticated level of fundraising and a lot of various programs being coordinated together, et cetera. And so that kind of background gives you a good understanding of the relationships between the different audiences that you may have, as well as how or which particular methods and techniques are best to use. Hospitals have patients. That's a natural constituency. Your new organization will identify what its natural constituency is, and then you can determine how best to engage them with you. All right, moving on, accountability. In today's world, the organization's annual exam, if you will, is it making a difference to the folks in the community that its mission says is its purpose, its reason to exist? Is the organization affecting change? Can you document the actual measurable benefits that were delivered? Has it improved the quality of residents' life? Whatever your cause says, this is what you're doing. Can you measure that? And can you then talk about that next year? I like to use this particular graphic starting in the upper right-hand corner, community needs assessment. According to what your mission says your role is, what is the extent of the need in your community for that service? And how does your organization plan to address that in terms of its own internal ability and its strategic plan for the future, which evolves into the annual operating budget plan, which then says we need to do fundraising for this budget year for X, Y, or Z funds. We then receive the funds. We steward the funds, we apply them to our programs and services as outlined. Too many organizations still stop there and go back to the operating strategic plan for year 2 and repeat that cycle. In today's world, you take the next step above, you measure the outcomes, and you report them to the community as benefits delivered. That's your case for support turning into an actual demonstrated end product of benefit to the community. Kind of a good way to see how it all comes together in the end. Now, there are various policies and procedures that fundraising operations need to know and understand and need board approval. How do you set your policy? How do you set your goals? What will you accept as a gift? Will you accept gifts of cars, boats, art? But you're a pet organization. You have no ability to deal with those animals, with those things. What is your gift acknowledgement policy? Can you get a thank you out the door in 48 hours? That's a good goal, to be able to thank donors reasonably quickly. How do you data entry? Who receives the actual checks as they come in, if they come in through the mail, or who processes, who records? What is your stewardship? What is your donor recognition? You give $100, we make you a member of the Century Club. How does that work? Any other honors and recognition for longtime donors? Your actual database, data management system. What is your record-keeping system so you can document all of your activities? And please remember to say thank you more than once in the course of a year. Policies and procedures. There are various voluntary outside organizations that actually provide evaluations of nonprofits. The first is for religious organizations, standards of responsible stewardship. That's a pass-fail. Charity Navigator, which is a very large organization, well known, does thousands and thousands of charity evaluations based on those charities' IRS Form 990 annual tax return. And they score you 1, 2, 3, or 4 stars. The American Institute of Philanthropy, now called Charity Watch, has a set of criteria A through F. Now, why these folks have to have different ratings is beyond me, but nonetheless, if they score you low, you get 1 star by Charity Navigator, the public may say, what's wrong? And there may be something, but it's not understood just from them. And the Better Business Bureau has several criteria, and that's largely for national organizations. So just be aware that those are out there, and your organization may be listed someday. Just to wrap up, ethics and accountability, transparency, what's private about a public benefit organization is my view. So understand that the public has the right to know what you're doing with their money and with the rest of the funds they receive. Accountability means that you actually do what you say and you can make it available to the public, and that transparency is a very large part of your public stance. All of what you do is public document, just so you're aware. Just an example from the Code of Ethics of the fundraising professions. Members of that profession take care to ensure that all solicitation and communications are accurate and correctly reflect the organization's mission and the use of solicited funds. Pretty straightforward. In the Donor Bill of Rights, to be assured, the donor has the right to be assured their gifts will be used for the purposes for which they were given, and to receive appropriate acknowledgement and recognition. So there's a website for both of those documents. And lastly, the organization that makes itself transparent, holds itself accountability to its constituents, demonstrates good stewardship of its mission, of its resources, both human and physical, can engage in fundraising with the public from a position of strength. So a quick review, we actually looked at some fundraising methods and techniques and strategies and how budget is reflected and how gifts reports can explain how we're doing, understanding that there are guidelines and policies and procedures that help our organization carry out these kinds of things, understanding the role of evaluation, and accountability, and that there is a code of ethical standards that we will observe.
And I see Lisa has a question that says, oh, hold on, she just has another one. Let's go back to your, I'm wondering about any thoughts on board selection for a nonprofit reaching a national audience. Do you have any tips for that?
If the cause is an organization that is like any others, and I can't guess at what yours is, that there are other entities like yours, then those board members are an example of the level that you seek. There isn't a sort of categorization of board members that fit in all these boxes, but it's good to look at what others have, who they have developed, and what their role and responsibility is. Sometimes you need national representation, which is a little hard if you're local as an organization. If you're local, then it's local community leaders, people that are respected.
So you're saying if she were to start let's say her idea was, you know, a breast cancer or something, then she could potentially ask somebody on the national board to be on her board as well. Is that what you were saying?
That's part of it, but also look to the level of who those people are.
Yeah.
What are their qualifications? What are their positions that give respect to that organization?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. And then she had another question. How in the world do I choose a CRM for my startup nonprofit? Do you have a preference and why?
You've heard of QuickBooks. You've heard of Excel. Those are record-keeping vehicles that are reasonably inexpensive and will do everything for you as you get started. When you get bigger, there's Donor Perfect, there's Neon, there's Bloomerang. But when you have 1,000 or more donors, that makes sense to be able to grow up to that. But you can start with QuickBooks and Excel.
I like it. That's something you already have, hopefully not an extra expense. Great questions, though. Well, thanks for being here, Jim. You know, I realized we didn't, I know that Lisa had listened to, and I'm pretty sure Rachel was last week. Thanks for an excellent presentation. Sorry when I had questions to respond. My internet crashes. Oh, I know. That's okay, Rachel. I know that you're usually kind of quiet there. But I did want to give you a moment, you know, your affiliation with SCORE. I know that both of these people have listened to our first, but, you know, the help with nonprofits doesn't stop at today's webinar. So do you want to maybe talk about how they could work with you further?
Well, right here in Lacey, or whether you're in Tacoma or in the Olympia large area, the SCORE office there is an office based here at the Economic Development Council, and Brian, whose name you had listed as the contact, is our contact to schedule an appointment, and I'd be delighted to meet with either of you or the others who have participated in this. Just call Brian, he knows my schedule, and he'll book me some time.
Absolutely. I'll type it, or no, I'll send out that phone number for you to call.
And Ryan's email.
And Ryan's email, yes. And that way you can make an appointment with Jim or from SCORE or with the Women's Business Center.
We're in the same building.
Same building, just down the hall from each other. And you know, SCORE is a great partner organization to the Women's Business Center. We're both funded by the U.S. Small Business Administration. The really cool thing about SCORE is they're all their mentors are volunteers. That, you know, so Jim is here of his volunteer time, and we appreciate it so much to give back to just this wealth of knowledge. And gosh, the whole team kind of has a different specialty in different things. Since they are volunteers, they're not here all the time, you know, 40 hours a week. So definitely call or email to make an appointment so that when you come in, they're here waiting for you. Yes, yes. Well, thank you both, and thank you to anybody listening to the recording as well. I will send out the follow-up information to your email. Let's see. Thanks so much. Lots of good information, a little bit overwhelming at this point. My expertise is in relationship building as a major gifts officer. The financial end freaks me out. You know, I think that I think is good maybe that you're freaked out a little bit, and that's go see Jim. Don't do any of it alone. You know, and it is really, it can be overwhelming, but that's why programs like SCORE and the Women's Business Center are here for you. You don't have to go it alone, and we're so excited that we have a profit expert in Jim. So yes, make sure that you take advantage of that, Lisa. And I hope to see everybody on the next edition of Let's Talk Business. We'll be talking about profit and loss statements next week as it relates to for-profit businesses. See you next week. Have a great day.